Oh my god, the 3DS is officially 10 years old in the United States now, everyone. So it hit the 10-year anniversary in Japan last month, but now the US is catching up, and I thought it'd be fun for us to finally discuss this because we were all busy a month ago, and hey, it's a 10-year anniversary for us proper since we're all based in the US. So we're joined by Joey, Tom, and Tris to discuss the anniversary, and before we get to it, everyone, I have some sad news. So I went to go revisit my 3DS today, one of the few 3DSs I have, the original launch model in this case, and I discovered it no longer works. The 3D screen is dead on my 3DS. It wouldn't work. I can still use a touchscreen, but I can't see anything on the 3D display. And it worked.
At least you can play Phantom Hourglass.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. And it had worked just a few months ago when I was playing Kid Icarus Uprising on it. So it's such a sad day for me. Bittersweet day on the day we're celebrating its long life that my launch unit has died.
There's something about the launch unit, though, that's just like, you can't help but admire the weird design of it, having the start and select and home buttons at the very bottom. You know, I didn't even think much of it then, but then when the new 3DS came out, I was like, wow, I really didn't realize how poorly placed those start and select buttons were.
It's even more weirder hopping between units because like a lot of buttons change place. The power button, the start and select buttons, as you mentioned, the stylus slot, which completely throws me off. Like I don't know, when I'm reaching for the stylus absentmindedly, I'm like, why isn't there anything there?
They changed it so much. I forget which one did it, but there's a WarioWare minigame about it, where it's like find the stylus, and you have to like rotate this model of a DS,
that's
a 3DS,
evil.
a 3DS XL to find the stylus and pull it out.
They knew. They changed it so much that with the new 3DS, they had to add the Circle Pad. They had to release a Circle Pad Pro for the original 3DS. This giant hawking like dock essentially or shell for the original 3DS to add a second joystick and second set of buttons. It was so weird. Did anyone use that, or did you guys use it?
No,
I did not. I don't understand how you could use it. It was like off. It was off. Like it wasn't to the right of the face buttons.
Oh yeah, it made it completely like lopsided, and the way it interface is both very weird and kind of genius. Because they require the 3DS's IR port, which otherwise was barely used by anything, but that was essential to having it work because it had no other, like it didn't have any USB slots or anything. That was a way Nintendo figured out how to make a accessory work with it. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And I think it was powered by a battery too.
Interesting.
That's so weird to look back on it like that.
It is.
Because now when we have the 3DS XLs, or I guess now at this point the 2DS XLs, that they just got really clean with those designs. I mean, I thought the 3DS XLs were already pretty great, and like, oh yeah, like this is the final version. It feels pretty complete here. They address a lot of the issues in the design. There we go. And then they have the new 2DS XLs, which is just one of the sleekest handhelds that Nintendo has ever put out, and I unfortunately don't have one, but I love how it looks.
I agree, yeah, I think the 2DS, the new 2DS, I get confused with all the names, it's actually pretty cool looking. It has like cool like textured top to it as well, but the weird thing about it is, obviously, is it's missing the cornerstone of the 3DS, or what it seemed to be at least, being the 3D display. Which is such, I think it kind of like ties into one of the major issues with the 3DS initially, is that this is an example, one of the rare times where Nintendo is very clearly chasing a trend. 3D was all the rage when the 3DS was coming out, largely thanks to Avatar. 3D TVs were coming out to some degree, and the 3D technology was really super cool. Like it was a really novel thing. I remember being at E3 when they revealed it, when they had like the 50 like women come out all carrying 3DSs, which is super weird, and we got to see like the tech display of it and try a few games, and it was super impressive. It's like, wow, that's really neat. And even today when I went back to revisiting it, I'm like, it's kind of magical. Like it feels like you're looking less at a screen and into like a magical portal, albeit a really low resolution one, into like a world that exists behind it. And that's super cool. But the problem, I think, is that once I get over the novelty of it, it doesn't add that much. Like, I would turn off the 3D, I'm like, whoa, this is weird. Like, I feel like I'm losing something. After like 30 seconds, I'm totally used to it. It didn't even matter. And I think that's kind of like one of the barriers with the 3DS initially, is that the price they were charging, which was $250 at launch, wasn't justified by the hardware or the game selection at the time. And
No.
Nintendo did something famous, or surprising by their standards, in which only 4 months after launch, they had to drop the price down from $250 down to $169. And as an apology to people who bought it earlier, it gave them 10 free Game Boy Advance games and 10 free NES games, digital versions on the 3DS. And from that point, the 3DS largely took off and became the success we now know it to be. So let's talk a little bit about a launch period. Like, did you guys pick up a system at launch? Why or why not? How were you feeling during that time?
I do remember I did pick it up at launch. I remember the game I got with it was Pilot Wings Resort.
Yeah.
That was a fun one, but there wasn't really any game that was wowing me at launch. What actually
Steel Diver didn't do it for you?
No. what actually kept my interest at first was the Street Pass and the AR games with like the little AR cards. Those are what actually kept me focused on it until we got more like first-party releases later in the year.
How long did they? I mean, this is relatively, because I can't imagine the AR held your interest that long, because there wasn't much to them.
It was a little bit for like the first I'd say maybe like first month, because like trying different things, trying to complete all the the archery game and things. But it definitely was more so the Street Pass. But even then, I don't even think there was too much of Street Pass at launch. So it was more of, this is neat, I'll play my DS games on this for now until we get something bigger for this.
And that was probably one of the best parts about the 3DS, at least initially, was that it was backwards compatible with the DS library, which of course I think to many people had one of the coolest or most eclectic libraries of any Nintendo handheld at the least, or probably any Nintendo system. But yeah, it wasn't quite enough to excite the masses at launch. How about you, Joey, though? How were you feeling about it?
I got a 3DS for my birthday, which was about 2 weeks after launch. My grandma got it for me.
That's
and
nice.
I'm just like, thank you, Grandma. And when the price dropped, I was like, I'm sorry, Grandma, but thanks for these 10 free games, these 20 free games. But with it, I got Super Street Fighter 4. It was Super, right? I think it was on the 3DS.
Super Street Fighter 4 3D edition.
Yes, even though I suck at Street Fighter and I sucked at it back then, it was still really cool to have that. And this other little lesser known game called Combat of Giants Dinosaurs 3D, which was probably the most boring game ever, but it looked really good on the 3DS, at least back then. It's just like you're playing as a T-Rex and its tail is like sticking out at you in 3D, and I was like, this is the coolest part of the game. Other than that, I think it was like some really dumbed down turn-based like fighting game. It was just literally, it's the definition of a launch title, where it's like, it's all looks, nothing else below it. But I remember taking my 3DS to school. I was doing stage plays, and backstage, all my friends were like taking their turns on the 3DS. My friend literally was playing Street Fighter like it was an arcade stick. Like, he had it in his lap, and he was pressing the buttons with his fingers. And I was like, oh, you're doing pretty good there. Please don't scratch it. Yeah, so that was my experience with the 3DS. And then Ocarina of Time came out, and Super Mario 3D World came out, and I pretty much ignored 3D Land. Came out. Yeah, it's confusing. The names, ugh. But I remember like kind of ignoring my 3DS for quite a while, because I really did feel like the gaps between software were kind of a little too long. Yeah,
it kind of says a lot that on the Nintendo platform, the most exciting games, I think, during launch and probably shortly, at least for some period thereafter, were the third-party games. Because the first-party ones were fine, but they weren't anything exciting, especially at launch, where, as I think Triss already covered, we had Pilot Wings Resort, which, on the one hand, I think is kind of cool, because Pilot Wings had been at the launch of several other Nintendo platforms, like helping to showcase the technology. But the thing was, they were always the supporting title. They were never the main title. In this case, that's basically they were trying to present Pilot Wings Resort as the main like launch game, and that's not what it should have been, because the other games that accompanied it from Nintendo were Steel Diver, which was whatever. I mean, I tried visiting it again today. I'm like, yeah, I remember why I never beat this game. It's not good.
I beat it.
Oh, wow,
that
I'm impressed.
Was like that was my launch game. I think I knew it had Giles Goddard on the team developing it, the guy who's kind of behind 1080 snowboarding. But even still, it's like it was a little bit novel at the time, but more like what should have been a downloadable title, not a full-scale cartridge release.
Should have been free with the 3DS, is what you're saying.
Which it wasn't.
It
Right,
was
exactly. And then also, don't forget, Nintendo Dogs plus Cats, with Nintendo trying to recapture that Nintendo DS magic. And I believe it still sold well, but, you know, it's still like, how exciting can it be? It's, you know, it's a modestly upgraded, exactly, yeah. So yeah, the launch was a little underwhelming, and even for the period thereafter, like, a lot of the games we got were, you know, remakes or you know, upgrades of existing games, such as Ocarina of Time 3D, which I think was cool, but it was still the same game we'd played before. And then even like one of the first big like 2D games was New Super Mario Bros. 2, but again, that was just more New Super Mario Bros. At that point. I think as you kind of
wasn't that a year later though?
It was 2012. Yeah, it was 2012. But I mean, there wasn't a ton of games between those two from Nintendo.
Well, there was Mario Kart 7.
Yeah,
which that was really big. I would.
Yeah, I was going to mention the games that kind of turned it around were, to some degree, Mario Kart 7 and the Super Mario 3D Land, as Joey touched on. So yeah, Mario coming to the rescue once again.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess in that early launch period, what were early, you know, year or two, what were some of your favorite games, if you remember?
Given that I have 748 hours in Mario Kart 7 on my original 3DS one, I think that's safe to say. That one is... I literally checked this before recording this. And that's just on my original, the 3DS, well, transferring up to the new XL, but... So that doesn't even factor in when I did streaming back in 2020 with Mario Kart 7 and other games, because that was on my recording 3DS. So I have a lot of hours put into that, and I think that game was, for the longest time, one of my all-time favorite Mario Kart games. I loved the content, I loved the gameplay, it felt really good. And that game was actually really neat too with the 3DS, because it used the 3DS gyro. If you turn your 3D on, you can play in first-person mode and use the gyro all together, and it was a really interesting experience for Mario Kart that is still really unique, actually, and I want that to come back.
I want it in VR. I want them to do that in Mario Kart 8 or Mario Kart 9, exactly, first person. I will say, though, it is funny to me how Nintendo, as I rediscovered today with Star Fox 64, another game that was ported in the early first year or so, by the way, is that Nintendo really leaned in hard on gyro for some reason on a system that was not designed with it in mind, really. It did not jive with that 3D display, especially before the new 3DS, which had the camera that could at least adjust a 3D screen. Because if you were outside the sweet spot at all in 3D, it would just turn into like a blurry mess, where you see both images mashed together. So...
I'll say that quickly. That was one of the hardest things for me, always with 3DS, like trying to get the angle just right for the 3D effect, because I've only had the original this whole time. I never had any of the new ones, so that was one of the things that did make it difficult to use.
It would kind of look like I was seeing double sometimes, but I guess it wasn't just me experiencing that, though, because they fixed that in the new 3DS. Sometimes I still saw double, but the 3D sensor kind of tracked your face in a sense, so you already knew where you were looking. And sometimes it worked more often than it did on the original, I will say that at least.
Yeah, for sure. No, I discovered today how much better it is on the new, or we discovered today how much better it is on the new 3DS, because yeah, it does, there's a bit of a delay, a very slight delay when you change your angle, but it quickly catches it and then adjusts the perspective for you, so it kind of resolved that double image ghosting problem you had. But as I rediscovered as well when I played Pilot Wings Resort, that the sense of depth in that game is probably some of the best on the 3DS, because they went to such an extreme that it almost hurts your eyes to look at if you have on the max setting. I think that's why they dialed it back in subsequent games. I actually I did myself too today, because if you focus on the distance, like on the background, which you probably would be playing the game, it causes your main character to appear in double, regardless of what system you're playing on, because you're focusing on something in the distance, and that is not a comfortable experience. So I turned that down, and so I started playing around with, like, you know, how much better it is on or off and all that. So
I think the two other games that come to mind that did the whole thing with the 3D actually making really good depth, I think the only two other games that come to mind that really did that well were A Link Between Worlds and Super Mario 3D Land, because they almost relied on it. Or rather, maybe not relied on it, but they really played into that, like, really hard with the level design and everything, too.
3D Land... Go ahead.
3D Land, wasn't there a certain puzzle that you could only do in 3D, I believe?
Yeah.
I want to call out one of my favorite kind of first-year games. And for me, probably my favorite way forward game, a Mighty Switch Force, where you had a button to toggle the blocks forward and back into perspective, and then jump for them. It got so many brain-bending puzzles later on. I probably love that game more than I should. But that was one that stood out, and I even played it again yesterday. Yeah, it's
nice.
still good.
That was such a better showcase of how it could benefit 2D games than New Super Mario Bros. 2 was. I loved the interplay with like the foreground and background elements. I mean, there were actually a few other, quite a few other games, especially indie games that did that, like Mutant Mudds as well. And I was so disappointed that Nintendo didn't try playing around with them more in the 2D space. I think they did in the Kirby games, but like
the Kirby games.
Mario should have done that too. And it wasn't until 3D Land that we finally, or rather, it was only 3D Land. This new Super Mario Bros. 2 came after that. And I remember speculating that based on the early images they released of the game, like, oh, maybe you can go in the foreground and background, a little bit like how Wario Land Virtual Boy worked. And no, that wasn't the case at all. It was just another new Super Mario Bros. Game with barely any elements that made use of the 3D, which was so sad to me because I'm like, Mario should be the one showing this off, and where is he? What's he up to?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Mario and Luigi Dream Team was another one that kind of did it. It was neat because you definitely see like the layering with the sprites and all that, especially in the 2D sections in Luigi's Dreams. But it was more of just it looks kind of pretty, but otherwise, like in many cases of the 3D, you kind of just forget about it.
Yeah, that's so. I guess for you guys, how often did you find yourself using the 3D over the course of the 3DS's lifespan? Did you always use it? And if you did it matter that much to you?
I felt like I would use it more often than not just because I'd feel like I'm wasting it by not using it, you know? Even if I didn't see that much of a difference. Like, I played Animal Crossing New Leaf, like, most of the time on my 3DS. The 3D doesn't do much on that game, but I still felt like I had to have it on because, like, hey, it's a 3DS.
Exactly.
Come on, man.
I would use it when doing first person in Mario Kart 7 to complete that experience more, but I didn't find myself using it too often anything else other than turning it on to see how it looked with said game.
Yeah, that's I would always turn it on first, see how it is, see if it kind of bugged me or not, and probably about half the time I'd use 3D, I would say.
Yeah, whenever I was playing it casually, I'd turn it on, but whenever I had to record videos, I'd turn it off just so I had the centered display. And that's when I realized like how little, as I kind of touched on earlier, like it really mattered. Like it is a really neat effect, but it's also a subtle one at the same time. And in most cases, it didn't really add much, and certainly very little of anything that was essential. So it's again a weird example, one of the rare examples where Nintendo was the one following the trend rather than setting the trend. And I think it kind of hurt them, at least initially, where they were charging a lot more with this new technology. That just wasn't that appealing for most people, I think. It didn't add enough to justify its high cost, and which was clearly the case, even more so when again Nintendo released a 2DS and removed the feature entirely. So
yeah. Some 3DS games, even first-party ones later on, I think didn't Hey Pikmin not support 3D? From what I read,
yeah, there were quite
a
a few.
games,
There were quite a few that didn't. The Pokemon games didn't, I think, either.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And surprisingly, Metroid Samus Returns did, and that 3D was fantastic. It was actually really good on Samus Returns, which surprised me.
I think it almost stands out more in the 2D games because like you had that very clear division in layers where it's almost too I don't want to say subtle, but like maybe too complimentary of the 3D games where like you just accept it as being how it would be. So it's almost I mean it is more immersive in that sense, but it's easier to forget about too. It's in the more in-your-face examples that it really stands out, I think. Like in Smash Brothers when the character literally gets slammed into the screen, which is kind of a fun effect.
Yeah. Even beyond specifically the 3D though, and it's only really during this discussion I'm thinking back and realizing it, we're talking about how the 3D got kind of underutilized at times, but I wonder if it's in part they had way too many different new systems for the 3DS. I mean, they had AR cards, and they used them in some games. They had Street Pass, which was very underutilized in many instances. They have all these different systems to the console that I think, had they maybe picked and choose more and leaned more into it, they could have made for something really big and interesting, but they went for, I think, too many things.
It's a little bit like a Swiss Army knife, like it has a lot of everything.
Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, that very well could be. But I don't know what more they could have done with what they had. Like Also, they used 3D to pretty much the best effect they could. I don't know what you could do exclusively with that technology beyond the few examples they did that you couldn't just do in 2D. Street Pass was limited by the geography of where most people lived. It's a feature that was better designed, better set for Japan, where you have a high population density, which you don't have so much in the States or in other countries. So for a lot of people, like in more rural areas, it had no benefit at all, because you're never going to see anyone with a 3DS.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean, I think it's kind of fun. On the one hand, Nintendo tried a lot of new ideas with it, but there just wasn't a lot they could do with those ideas, or it just wouldn't benefit everyone equally. Like, some people just couldn't use a 3D at all. Some people couldn't use a Street Pass at all, and that was kind of the biggest issues with it, I think.
Yeah, they were all interesting mechanics, but none of them could have stood on their own as the key only new feature compared to the DS.
Right. Like, yeah, I felt like the 3DS was just kind of gimmicky in a lot of ways. Like, Street Pass was cool, but I got annoyed with checking the gate, especially before they patched it where you couldn't even speed through it. Where you go to the gate, slowly read 10 different Miis, up to 10 different Miis, like, what their favorite games are, like, what their favorite thing is or whatever. I'm like, I don't care anymore. And very, very seldom did they have something of interest in the games I wanted to play.
No, that's totally fair. Street Pass was, like, very mixed in terms of how it was executing games. Some games actually had, like, really neat uses for it. Like, I'll take Mario Kart 7 again. You can make, you can race against that person's Mii, and they can make a small, like, cup of the courses they want. So it was like 3 or 4 courses of, like, their favorites in the game that you would just race on those, and you can do, like, a little time trial against them. But that's just kind of neat. There's a few other games that really had fun uses of Street Pass, but it's interesting to look at the different systems that 3DS had, and how the games chose to use them or didn't choose to use them.
Right.
I keep mentioning the AR cards, in part because I opened up as part of my 3DS case and I found, not only do I still have them, I have, from a marketing campaign, I never used them, temporary tattoo versions of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, like,
it's not too late to use those, Tris.
So, like, you would actually, like, apply them and use them. And I remember there's also the, way back when Nintendo New York was Nintendo World, they had, like, the giant AR card, like, in the entrance, like, printed on the ground. Wow. So you could use that, like, when you walked in the store. It was really neat. But it was used in marketing. They used it in its own little app it had. And then I think there were 2 games that used those at all. There could be more. But I remember very specifically one of the Mario Party games. It was Island Tour or Star Rush. Had a whole mode with the AR card that it would have, like, this mini game appear for you, and you had to, like, rotate around it, and it was weird. And it was, like, the first time the AR cards had been used in, like, 4 years at the time. It was weird.
Yeah, Nintendo loves adding cameras to their systems and then barely using them. I don't know what it is about it, but yeah, the AR cards are interesting because, yeah, I thought it was a really neat technology-based, feature at that point, but it's one also, one, didn't work especially well at the time, and 2, wasn't, like, for as neat as it was, wasn't that great either,
Yeah.
Like, I played the mini games once, I'm like, hey, that was neat, I never need to touch them again. And even had some more, like, AR-based games too, like the Face Raiders game that came included, and that's probably the best one, or probably my favorite one of them.
Yeah, Face Raiders was fun.
And I think it says a lot about AR that even 10 years later, we still don't really have many compelling games that have taken advantage of it on other platforms, It's still something they're still working out. Like, how do we make this work? Only now, more recently, are games kind of, like, better incorporating, like, Pokemon Go, for instance, where Pikachu can run behind someone's leg, for instance, or something,
Let's not forget about the Microsoft HoloLens classic, Young Conker.
I actually had that in my mind the entire time. Young Conker, oh man. So yeah, maybe there'll be a day where it'll actually happen, and to Nintendo's credit, they were way ahead of the curve, but Nintendo couldn't figure out how to make it work, 10 years ago, and granted, technology is better these days. It's just kind of like inherently annoying to use. Like, taking my 3DS, circling a little card in real life is not fun, It wasn't a good gameplay experience, even though it was kind of neat. But yeah, anyways. Go ahead, Tom.
Just real quick, look at how long it's been since Virtual Boy and Half-Life Alyx, the amount of time in between those two.
To make that work.
A fun note for my Street Pass, my 3DS had some sort of bug at launch that didn't get updated till like a patch later on where I could only get 9 Street Passes. Like, so when I would go to an expo, I'd have to try to open it up till 9, because if I got 10, it would crash and I would get none of them.
Oh my god. That's so frustrating.
That's rough.
Well, I guess let's talk about some of our favorite 3DS experiences. You know, whether it's a feature or game, you know, any standout moments to you. What are some of your favorite things in the 3DS's 10-year history? Which, real quick, I want to add that this system effectively made it to almost to its 10-year anniversary alive, because it was only late last year that Nintendo finally stopped production of the 3DS family. So that's pretty impressive.
Yep.
So
yeah.
So that's so we have a long timeline of games that we can cover here if we want. So let's start with you, Joey. Which one of your favorite experiences with the 3DS?
My favorite experience has to have been with Animal Crossing New Leaf. Like, that was it was my first Animal Crossing game. I've just heard it was back then I heard so many good things about it. And like, that game came out like right when I graduated high school, so I was just like already on cloud 9 because it's summer vacation. I don't have to go back to high school. There's new video game consoles coming out. I am excited for life. So then I just bought New Leaf, and I had an amazing time with it. Like, it's a very slow and cumbersome game when you start off, like most Animal Crossing games are. But it was just an overall just positive experience of just like, just fishing for stuff, selling the fish, getting your home loan paid off. And I'm so mad because I lost that original cartridge and I don't have my old village anymore. So it's really sad. And, New Horizons was technically a better game than New Leaf, but I don't know if it's just nostalgia or... I
think a lot of people would disagree with that.
I mean, I think technically, not object, but like, it has better mechanics, it's got a really cool crafting feature, but it's missing something that New Leaf had. I don't know if I just don't like the tropical setting as much as I like the overall just town setting.
Right.
I did feel like also New Leaf just sort of did better at like giving us new content every once in a while, other than New Horizons. I'm getting them mixed up because of both new games. but yeah, I don't know if any other Animal Crossing game is just going to top New Leaf just because that's just kind of where I was in life at that point, and I'll probably never be there again, sadly.
Yeah, New Leaf is arguably, I think, where the franchise really started to blow up. Like, it was on a platform that was reaching a lot of people, and that's kind of like, I think, what set the groundwork for New Horizons to then blow up even more than New Leaf already did. But yeah, New Leaf, I think, is close to a lot of people's hearts, and I know many people have played it for years. Like, it's on the convenient system, like a system arguably even more convenient than the Switch to take with you wherever you want to play it at any point.
Definitely.
And it had cool online features. Like, I should add real quick that the 3DS, beyond the kind of the gimmicky features it had, did a lot to just improve it over the DS as well. Like, it had way better graphical capabilities, it had a much better online infrastructure, and we saw that it realized in a lot of games such as like Mario Kart 7, Animal Crossing New Leaf, plenty of others. So yeah. How about you, Tris? Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say about New Leaf, it also had a really long longevity to it, because like once it came out like 2013, I think, right?
Yeah.
And by the time it slowly started to fizzle out around like 2016, 2017, then they did the Welcome Amiibo update, to which added like the Amiibo cards, that added the Zelda villagers, Splatoon villagers, mini games, like that revitalized that game for another good like 3 years. Yeah. And it is wild, actually, that they managed to make it last that long.
Wild world, you might say.
Yeah.
Yes. It came out in 2012, by the way, so it had an even longer lifespan. Yeah.
No, it came out in 2013.
Are you sure?
It might have been in 2012 in Japan and then 2013 here, maybe.
Yeah, it looks like it was. I think it was Japan 2012 and 2013 elsewhere. Yep. So there we go. Problem solved.
Okay. Awesome.
There we go.
How about you, Tris? What's one of your favorite experiences with the 3DS?
I had to say Super Smash Bros. For 3DS. I really loved how that was, and I know competitively, so many people like, why would you touch the 3DS version when you can use a GameCube controller on the HD one? But
are you quoting me now?
Smash Run. Well, I don't know. I just mean in general. But like Smash Run was so much fun, and
was a cool idea.
I have so many good experiences and memories of back when I was in high school. This was like senior year for me at this point, where my friends would bring Smash on their 3DS, and at like the end of our school days, whether it was like between classes or during lunch, or like literally at the end of the day when like waiting for the buses and everything, we would all pull out Smash and just start playing, and especially with Smash Run, and it was such a fun experience, getting to not only finally have the game that had been hyped up for so long and being part of that hype cycle, but really getting to play this on the go wherever. And even though a lot of people gave it a lot of flack for, you know, being on a 3DS, it doesn't look that good, but I would still argue it's the better game out of the two from that time of Wii U and 3DS.
Wow.
I mean, what was that mode on the Wii U version that just sucked?
Smash Tour?
Yes, it didn't have Smash Tour, so it's automatically better. Yeah, Smash Run was so great, and I loved getting. It felt like Smash Bros. For 3DS felt like, oh, you're waiting for the Wii U version? Here's something to tide you over, because it came out like a month, I want to say, a month and a half for the Wii U version, which is really smart, because it was kind of just like get people excited for the Wii U version, which a lot of people still didn't buy, but you know.
Yeah, 3DS one, right, it sold better than the Wii U one.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I remember for Smash 3DS, they did that demo, like, I want to say like a week or two before the game actually released for like Club Nintendo members, I think. And when they gave you the code, they gave you additional, like if you got in, they gave you additional codes to give out to other people, so you can actually play it with people. You can only have 4 characters. I think it was Mario, Link, Mega Man, and Villager. Those are the only characters you can play in the demo, but I remember, because I went to the midnight release for Smash 3DS and for Wii U, and everyone was playing this demo, and like people challenging each other in line and trying to do everything, and so many people made groups where, okay, what they're gonna do is as soon as they get in and get the game, they're gonna like sit back down outside the store and boot up the game together and play other characters together in other stages, and it was really fun to see and experience that. And that's definitely part of why I think Smash 3DS is one of my favorite experiences and memories with the 3DS, because it just stands out so much.
I won one of those demos on a Facebook giveaway. I walked into work that day. My coworker, huge, biggest Smash fan ever. I opened my 3DS, showed it to him. There was the character select screen. He was like, "Are you serious?"
That's awesome. Yeah, it's impressive that they made Smash work at all on the 3DS. Like, you know, on a compromised handheld, you know, like one that's not ideal for the type of game Smash is. They made it work remarkably well, and it ran at 60 frames per second still in 3D, and without with minimal slowdown to my memory. So yeah, it was an impressive feat, and they added exclusive features on top of it, such as Smash Run, and then even a few stages that haven't reappeared since, like the Pac-Man stage.
Yeah, Rainbow Road.
All they had to do was sacrifice the ice climbers.
Oh, sad day for ice climbers fans everywhere.
Yes.
Tom, how about you? What's one of your favorite experiences?
Well, Mario Kart 7 was definitely up there. It's maybe the last Mario Kart I was decent at. Something about the new ones, so the new mechanics are slightly different than what I'm used to. I'll give a shout out to one of the ones that came out in the first year, Sakura Samurai Art of the Sword. It was a bit like Samurai Punch-Out in a way, with more characters, because it's mostly just about dodging and parrying with attacks. And it had a neat storyline about saving a princess and working your way up through more and more hordes of swordsmen. I thought it was really well done for a downloadable title. And other than that, I think looking back, 2013 was maybe one of the better years, because there was Link Between Worlds and Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon that year. And Link Between Worlds, that was more, not necessarily the technical part of it, but just seeing how a Link game would work being flat against walls, and also getting items at any time, like being able to choose one. That was like, how will this work? And you know, it kind of did. And eventually, when it gets annoying enough, you get all the items anyway, or you can buy them. And the shopkeeper again proves to be a real key to a game. Like I finally later on, it's like something about shopkeepers,
Like the merchant, Resident Evil 4.
yeah, the merchant, or in I forget now, the recent, it was one of the Ninja games that came out, The Messenger. Yeah, the shopkeeper in that one. Something about shopkeeper can really make a game special for some reason.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too, looking back at Link Between Worlds, with how it, in some ways, like it kind of pointed toward the direction Breath of the Wild was going in, with it being, you know, non-linear, with you essentially having access to your entire inventory from the beginning, just not at once in this case. So it's kind of fun to see like how that kind of started the direction they were heading in.
It was also really nice to have that kind of return to classic Zelda that we haven't had in a very long time at that point. Because I mean, at the time,
Top-down,
other
yeah.
Zelda. Yeah, like the top-down style, like classic, like Link to the Past. Like the closest we had otherwise was Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks top-down Zelda, and
Spirit
those
Tracks
were
is a good
not...
game, darn it.
No,
Yep.
I actually love Spirit Tracks. It is actually up there for me, but it's very different than the classic Zelda that people might be looking for.
Right.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is very different.
That is true.
I love the development screenshot of Link Between Worlds. Like, this is what it looks like from an angle, and everyone's leaning back.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Well, speaking of Zelda, I would say that was probably one of my favorite parts of the 3DS, so actually Ocarina of Time 3D. Because I think it was an early-ish title for the system, and even though it was I was gonna say port, it was a remake. Especially when you look at when you compare it directly, it's like, wow, they added way more, they really revamped everything far more than I thought they did when I first saw it, before looking back at the original. And so yeah, what we had was like a remake from Nintendo, which was something that was pretty rare in those days. That was an epic scale adventure on the 3DS in full 3D, which is still pretty novel and impressive at that point. Especially like stepping out in the Hyrule field and seeing that field like stretch for it felt a little bit less at that point already, but in 3D it was it gave you a little taste of what it felt like in 1998 all over again. And yeah, it was just neat seeing that game upgraded in a way that was smart. Like the way, especially compared to what they did to Majora's Mask 3D, which made all the wrong changes. Ocarina of Time 3D made all the right changes. Adding some quality of life feature without compromising the core experience, such as being able to put on and off the iron boots without having to go through the pause screen constantly in the water temple. So yeah, that was a really cool game, and seeing again like a full-length adventure on the 3DS was pretty impressive at that point, I think.
Yeah.
But I also want to give a shout out to Donkey Kong Country Returns, because I remember being in the Nintendo press area at E3 where I got to play Skyward Sword, or no, I'm sorry, Skyward Sword was there, but I got to play Donkey Kong Country Returns on the Wii at the same time as playing the 3DS. I'm like, this feels weird, because it felt weird going from the 3DS to Donkey Kong Country Returns. It felt like it should be in 3D, but wasn't. But finally was in 3D, I think 3 or 4 years later on the 3DS. I'm like, finally, this is how it was meant to be the entire time. Even if it was half the frame rate, but yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
It is. It was a slight compromise, but also, actually, one more shout out. Dylan's Rolling Western. That game doesn't get the love it deserves. I'm not a big fan of tower defense in general, but I thought that was a fun one, and it's a game that no one really thinks about when they think of the 3DS. So
yeah. If we're giving shout-outs, you go ahead, Jess.
I was gonna say we should all give shout out to this point, because I think it might make for an interesting part of the discussion to see what we all want to spotlight. So yeah, Joey, go ahead.
Yeah, I was I was really into the Steam World franchise thanks to the Nintendo 3DS. Like, I got Steam World. I think Dig was also on Wii U at the time, but I don't remember actually. But yeah, Steam World Dig, I played on the 3DS. I was so addicted to that game, and then I got Steam World Heist like right after because I loved Dig so much.
And even though it was codename Steam,
I actually did, and I must have played like maybe 2 hours of that game, and I didn't even get past it. I feel like I need to on a shelf
You
somewhere.
let Lincoln down.
Oh man. But yeah, the Steam World franchise, like that, I got introduced to it thanks to the 3DS, and yeah, that was definitely great there. And shout out to Metroid Prime Federation Force. Just kidding.
Wow. Nice.
Someone had to bring it up.
Fake
really?
outs.
No.
How about you, Tris? What kind of shoutouts do you want to give?
I want to give a specific shout out to a game that I know so many people didn't play because of how late in the 3DS lifespan it came out, and that's WarioWare Gold.
that was a good
WarioWare Gold is a fantastic game. It was actually the first WarioWare game I played that wasn't DIY on the DS. So this was a fantastic way to get into the series, and it had like the best from the whole series.
Yeah, from the 3 main installments at least, yeah.
Yeah, I think it came out like 2019, so it didn't, or like 2018, 2019, so it didn't get that much attention. Unfortunately,
I think it was a little earlier than that, but
I know it was pretty late. It was closer to being one of the last first-party titles, I think.
2018.
2018, yeah. So unfortunately, a lot of people didn't get a chance to try it. So that's why I'm hoping they bring that to Switch at some point, because that ended up becoming one of my favorite experiences on the 3DS, and I think I ended up putting almost 40 hours in that game, in just the review period I had with it alone back then. So it ended up being really special to me. The other game I want to give a spotlight to is Kirby Planet Robobot, because that was the first time I got to play a Kirby game right when it came out, because I had only gotten into the Kirby series earlier that year. So getting this game right when it came out and it being so much fun, it's my favorite Kirby game, and I definitely think if people haven't given that one a shot, they definitely should.
Like me,
it's Kirby plus mechs.
I keep hearing I need to check out this game, because by this point I was getting kind of burned out on Kirby, because I felt like they were all basically the same thing. I'm like, I get it, I've seen it, like, do something new. And then it seems like they kind of finally did with the Robobot.
This was new, yeah.
So I missed out, so I need to go back and actually replay it or visit that game, so...
I replayed it after Star Allies came out, because I liked Star Allies, but I felt like it was missing something. And I went back to Robobot again afterwards, and I still loved it so much, so...
Yeah, Star Allies was missing everything, let's be honest. But I know people are going to get mad at me if I don't shout out Metroid Samus Returns. Because
we did earlier.
I did, kind of, yeah. I said the 3D in it was good, but I also should emphasize, if you haven't played it yet and you have a 3DS, don't wait for a Switch port. Just get it. Like, seriously, just do it.
Do you think it would be a worse game without the 3D?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
All right, Tom, what do you want to give a shout out to?
Well, I didn't really talk much about Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon earlier, but just that was next level's first Luigi effort, and it had great animation. Maybe some things were a bit repetitive towards the end, but you know, the super cartoony, expressive style, and I ended up, you know, finishing that game, and I loved it. Like, some games I'll play and it's like, whatever, but definitely one I kept going through all the way to the end.
Nice. I want to give a shout out to Mario Maker 3DS, which forgot the entire point of Mario Maker, making it so you can't upload stages.
Yeah. Oh, that game.
Yeah.
Tragic.
Tragic indeed. All right. Well, before we fully wrap it up here, I guess, do you have any other thoughts, or what are your general sentiments now on the 3DS now that, you know, we are at the end of its lifespan? Like, it's over, it's been replaced by the Switch. What's your lasting memory of the 3DS as a platform? Like, do you look back on it fondly? Do you miss it? What are your overall thoughts on it as a Nintendo handheld?
Yeah, I'm kind of gonna miss it. Like, it's gonna... It was... For one, it took up like 10 years of my life, so that's already like half my life, kind of. Not really, but feels like it. And it kind of brings me back to a time when Nintendo didn't always make the most like smart decisions or like streamlined decisions when it came to their hardware. Like, there was that eShop was super clunky. The home screen, even though it had folders, it still felt like it was kind of just all over the place. And the Switch kind of just made all that easy by just, it's so snappy. Everything's just so snappy. Right. But in that sense, you kind of lose some of the charm.
Yeah.
And I feel like the 3DS is like one of the last remnants of that Nintendo charm that we're so used to seeing, like, outside of their games. Their charm is still in their games, but I do miss like eShop music. I miss dashboard themes. I miss all that good stuff. And, you know, I wonder if Nintendo will ever make a portable-only console again, or if they will just stick only to just making their consoles from now on home console and portable consoles. You'd think now they would stick with that, but who knows?
I mean, technically they have, or technically they've done exactly that with a Switch Lite, which is handled only.
That's true, yeah. But it's still the Switch.
Exactly. I think that is a good question. I think at this point for Nintendo, I mean, it's possible to say for sure, but I think we're gonna continue to see it exists as a hybrid device. I don't think we're gonna see another dedicated handheld system, short of it being, you know, like a spin-off like the Switch Lite is, right? It's just working. I think this makes too much sense, and I hope, and I say that as one who's a little bit biased too, because so I'll dive in here with my overall thoughts on the 3DS, so we don't end on a negative note with you, because I wasn't the biggest fan of the system. I honestly really disliked playing on it in general. I thought the 3D display was cool, but it wasn't worth putting up with the tiny form factor, the circle pad, which wasn't great. Especially since we've seen it, you know, we've seen multiple system or versions of it breaking on people. Luckily, it never did for me. But I've seen like enough pictures over the years, like, oh man, I'm glad that didn't happen to me.
Oh right, that happened where it fell off during Oracle.
Oh yeah, there we go. See, yep,
wow.
That sucks. And I don't know, I like it. Maybe it came out a point in my life where, like, you know, I wasn't in school, so I wasn't playing with my friends on a convenient system. I just want to play on a TV. That's why the Switch is great, because it lets people who want to play, have a handheld experience, play it that way, whereas you can play on this docked TV form if you want. And that's generally how I preferred playing games. So I don't know if that colored my impression of the games as well. I don't think it did. But for me, I felt like the 3DS had a overall very strong library of games. The few exceptional titles. There are very few titles in the system that are, like, for me, must plays. As you know, which speaks to the point that one of the games I called out was an upgraded port of a game that already existed, being Ocarina of Time 3D. Like, take Mario 3D Land, for example. I love 3D Mario games. That game didn't really do it for me. I much prefer playing 3D World now, and did on the Wii U even. And so, yeah, I think it was a cool, quirky system that just came out a little bit too late, maybe for me, and didn't bring enough new and unique to really hook me. Although, real quick, we should give a shout out, just because no one's mentioned it yet, to Kid Icarus Uprising, which I would say was unique. I wasn't the biggest fan of that game either, although I did enjoy it when we revisited it a few months ago more than I remember doing so at the time. And that game was a technical showcase on the system, really showing off the 3D, the graphical power, and had a, you know, competent online mode as well. So that game was trying to do everything possible in the system, pretty much. Even to the point where I think it had an AR mode too, didn't it, Tris? Like with the cards.
Yep, it did. It did have a whole thing with AR cards, yep.
Leave it to Sakurai to use every feature possible when you can. So, anyways, that's my overall thoughts on the 3DS. I don't particularly miss it, but I appreciate it for what it was. But how about you, Tris? What do you think of it as a platform?
I'm definitely closer to what Joey had, where I'm definitely, I miss it, honestly. Not, like, so much that, like, I always go back to it or anything like that, but I miss the experiences that came from new releases on the system, and constantly keeping up with it when everyone had one. It's a feeling that's now there with the Switch, but it's one of those, I look back on it fondly because, to me, the 3DS is one of my favorite consoles in general. So I had a lot of fun with that. I put so much time into it over the years, and it's one that I don't think I'll ever forget. Even though there definitely were some weaker experiences that kind of didn't wow me, the games that grabbed me and kept me invested really, really did. So
nice. How about you, Tom?
With the 3DS, it's small, so you can actually bring it around fairly easily. It's like I couldn't envision myself putting a Switch in my pocket.
You see my video, haven't you, where I proved that was possible?
I'm not saying it's not possible. I mean, people put a man on the moon, but you know, it's more comfortable perhaps. And the fact that you could still play old DS games and keep that going at first, even still, some of the I do like maybe DS games more than 3DS games for how memorable they were. But to keep that option there, you know, it was a great time, and I will miss that kind of handheld only generation of Nintendo for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. There is something about, you know, there is something about the type of titles Nintendo made on a handheld exclusive system that they could still but don't really on the Switch, you know, where it's now more of a, you know, console space type of game that they're delivering. Yeah, where we're not getting like we're not usually getting the push modes or the Dylan's Rolling Westerns anymore, or even the or even some of the other games that you could point to, like Kid Icarus Uprising, for instance, which Sakurai even said recently would be difficult to make a sequel or port of, and I don't even know how you would begin to port that to a console, because its controls are so based on what the 3DS was. So I would say that is perhaps the greatest loss of the 3DS, or the end of the handheld exclusive line of Nintendo consoles, that we are kind of like losing out on those smaller experiences that Nintendo used to deliver. Because when you look at the 3DS's overall library, not only is it massive, but it's extremely eclectic. There are so many different types of experiences in there that almost everyone's guaranteed to find at least a handful of titles that they enjoy to some degree. So yeah. All right. Any other final thoughts, everyone, before we fully wrap it up here?
Special shout out to the Nintendo Badge Arcade.
Oh yeah.
I never actually played
fun.
that. Did you play the Rusty's baseball game or whatever?
The gambling one.
Tom?
I only saw that one. I'm like,
Okay,
no.
yeah.
My family has a gambling problem. I'm not touching this.
I know, I didn't touch it much either, but it's another one of those weird Nintendo-only experiences that could only happen really on the 3DS, where in that game you were basically like haggling down like real-world dollars you would spend like to buy the experiences that were part of the game. It was weird. So yeah, that's kind of like one of those weird Nintendo things of that era that we may never see again, for better or perhaps worse. So, all right.
Quick final thought, just to revisit, like when 3DS launched, it was kind of really bad and dire, and it's like one of those things when Nintendo always says like we're gonna keep the DS going or something like that. Like there's almost a reason they do that, because the 3DS almost didn't make it. Like if they didn't do the price cut, and like I think it still would have done decently, but there's a good chance there would have been, the PlayStation Portable and stuff at that time, and I think those would have taken over probably.
That is actually a good point that's worth driving home. The fact that Nintendo, like, in my experience, it seems like when the platform launches, you can usually tell how it's going to go based on that first year, or first 6 months even less than that. Nintendo turned it around. They turned the 3DS into a large success, even if it wasn't as successful as its predecessors, partially because it had to compete with smartphones, which the others didn't have to up to that point. Nintendo completely turned it around, which is impressive, and they really gave it their all in maintaining it as a platform. And I feel like, I partially feel like because Nintendo felt like they had to. Like at that point, the Wii U hadn't released yet, and I imagine Nintendo would be even more scared had it. But the Wii was at the end of its life, and they were, Nintendo's handheld line had largely been able to maintain them, or sustain them rather, through like the rougher periods. And when they saw the 3DS wasn't doing well, they're like, oh god, we got to pull out all the stops to fix this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, I think we're gonna wrap it up here on the 3DS's 10th anniversary in the States at the least, or in North America, I should say. So thank you all for watching, and let us know what your thoughts are on the 3DS, whether your favorite memories or your overall thoughts on the system, in the comments below. It'd be fun to hear your experiences with it. And of course, make sure to click that subscribe button, ring the bell, and click on the videos on the side of the screen that you can see right now. With that, we'll catch you later for, at least for the 3DS's 20th anniversary in 10 years from now, and everything else between then. We'll catch you guys later. Bye, everyone.